everybody, and welcome to our 3DEP for the Nation Interest Group meeting. We appreciate you being with us here today. We're going to have a brief USGS update. Phil's going to talk about some of the additional work he's done with the 3DEP data and data management resources, including some state responses. And then we'll just talk briefly about the wrap up on the current project. And with that said, I will turn it over to Brian Hadley.
Thanks, Linda. Okay. Hello, all. Hope everybody's well. So really quick update here on the status of data acquisition for FY23. So specifically with respect to the broad agency announcement, up to this point, and I will note that the BAA is set to close in 3 weeks on June 1st, but to date we received 26 BAA proposals in 15 states, and we've approved 20 of those proposals in 13 states, covering approximately 88,000 square miles. 2 proposals were converted to federal partnership projects, again, there's my point. It's open until June 1, pending available funding. Our funding for the year is starting to get on the low side, but we still have enough. If someone wanted to, submit something, we certainly will take a look at it. This wasn't ask for multiple millions. I think there's a reasonably good chance that we can still do something this year. But again, deadline's coming up on June 1. Okay. And Linda, I can't remember, do we have a federal partnership project one after this?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Oh, the next slide, is it, do we have the federal partnership slide, or is it just this one?
No, it's just this one.
Okay. And so also covered on this slide in the green areas are locations where we have plans for FY23 federal partnership projects. And then that's probably going to be somewhere on the order of 150,000 square miles of federal partnership projects. And I'm happy to take any questions about the FY23 acquisition plan.
Brian, I have a real technical one. Do you know roughly what percentage of continental U.S. square miles we've got now?
You know, I'm always really cautious to answer this one because Allison is the keeper of this. Actually, in square miles, no. I think we're probably going to be sitting somewhere in the 90%. Maybe as high as 93, 94% of the nation mapped at the end of FY23. There's actually a couple of things on the map that you're seeing right now that are not exactly correct. North Dakota has collected data for most of the area that shows as white in North Dakota, and they're very generous in that they actually paid to have their spec that differs from the 3DEP spec. They uplifted their data and they're going to contribute it to us. And so we're very grateful for that. So really a good portion of North Dakota that shows as white is actually going to be green here at some point. So again, thank yous to our friends in North Dakota. And we plan on doing a significantly large project in Oregon that will do another significant dent in what's left in the statewide coverage for Oregon. We're going to award that later this year. We have some really interesting and exciting stuff coming for California for FY24. Some commitments from some partners there. That's probably going to be enough to finish all the white remaining in California. And so, you know, we're looking at the map and it's really exciting. There's it's filling in, and you know, I always say I was one of the skeptics that questioned whether this was possible. And so to my 3DEP colleagues and to all of you as partners that have contributed to this, we're getting close. It's exciting. So If you really want to know square miles, we can probably get that for you, but
No, that's fine. Yeah.
It's about 35,000 square miles per percentage point.
Very impressive. Thank you.
Yes, that map is looking good. And for those of you that only come to the meeting to the 3DEP interest group meetings to see the status map, since I put in the chat, you can always access it at the URL in the chat. I check it regularly, so watch it grow. Any other questions for Brian? All right, thank you very much, Brian.
Thanks, Linda. Appreciate it.
Going to turn it over now to my colleague, Phil. He's going to give us a little bit of update on the 3DEP data and data management resources he's been working on. And with that, Phil, I'll stop sharing.
Okay. All right. I always love how these Zoom buttons disappear when you just need them the most. Okay, are you seeing the title slide?
We are, thank you.
Okay, right. Okay. So let me apologize in advance. This is the same presentation I gave at the mid-year meeting. So those of you that were at our mid-year meeting in Pittsburgh, none of this is new, but I know a lot of you weren't. So we definitely wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to kind of this wrap up for this project year meeting, to familiarize folks with these resources. They are not going away, and we continue to hopefully build upon them, regardless of what any future contract might look like as support with USGS and 3DEP, but because a lot of the stuff now, and as you'll see, is now as states are getting more and more 3DEP data, we're seeing a lot more activity in the data distribution and the data management resources, the tools, the whistles and bells to access these data, and it's real exciting. And we're seeing also a lot of activity at the federal level, and not just with USGS, but with other federal partners. So I wanted to take this up to kind of give an update on the USGS resources. And if you all remember, I think last December, I developed some FAQ documents to support some of these. And so a brief update on those, but then and also dive a little bit into, I've been developing a few tutorials to support some of the cloud native data capabilities. I want to introduce those to you. And then also as part of the presentation at the mid-year, I did a informal survey of states to see where they were at in basically developing their own data management and data distribution resources, their own pyramids, if you will. So I want to share some of that with you as well. And these are all resources that are available in Google folders and Google Docs on the NSGIC site, where I'm really looking for everyone to access. You can download them or you can contribute, use them just in place. But really looking for folks to contribute additional information to these as we go forward and as you guys do stuff. I was kind of asking Brian a leading question because my first slide here says almost 90%. So now I can say maybe almost 93% of national coverage going forward. And so we're seeing as a lot of this data becomes available, we're seeing tools and methods for accessing and processing these data becoming available, and it's real exciting. Do you guys remember? And thank you, Jason, for showing up today. We had this excellent presentation last June by Rob, Rick, and Jason on this USGS pyramid of resources that they had identified, for accessing and using this data, from the casual user all the way up to the DIY experts. And there was a lot to unpack here. There's over 11 standard products, 16 derivatives, and 25 different application methods. I think someone is not on mute, so if you could mute yourself, getting a little background noise. So we were really looking for, going forward, how to best leverage these resources, and in the NSGIC tenant of build once, use a bunch. That's more the fun way of saying it. But how do we take advantage of these opportunities and these tools? And one of the ways, especially up here in the upper stratosphere of this one, this more the cloud native and cloud-based solutions. So one of the things I did, again, was develop a set of tutorials developed back in December. The link is right here to the Google folder and also to the matrix. And what I basically did was create an FAQ for each one of those, but the matrix then identified how a particular data source could be used with the access tools or the download tools. So where you see the intersection of cells here is where you can easily see, if you're interested in a particular data product, how you can access it. And then the color coding was, I actually made some recommendations of ones in green that were, I think, maybe of more interest to states. So that was kind of the idea. But everything's on the table. I really encourage everyone to look at these and take advantage of the ones that make sense for you. Again, the tutorials were documented in the Google Docs. The introduction document that you're seeing just a screenshot of here has a link to every one of those FAQs. But it also has a link to the original resource. And so you can get, hopefully, very easily from an FAQ to the actual data source and learn a little bit in a page or two about that resource and how to take advantage of it. So again, encourage everyone to take advantage of that. Not only are these links in the slide, but all of these links have been added to our ArcGIS Online hub on the NSGIC.org website. So you can access them through the website as well. So that was all back in December. And then I started working on a couple supporting tutorials. And again, in this upper stratosphere of the both the raster and the point cloud-based solutions, the top end, it says DIY expert, but it's also, I feel, something that virtually any state or local government GIS department could take advantage of. We're really not talking rocket surgery here, but it is new and different, and there's a lot of new TLAs, three-letter acronyms, and terminology and ways of doing geoprocessing and accessing data in the cloud that are different than what you might traditionally have experience with. So it's well worth, I think, getting introduced to those things, and I'm hoping these couple of tutorials that I'm putting together will help you do that. They're very step-by-step, and you follow along and do them, and you hopefully can be successful in seeing how it works. The first ones I developed were really focused on using the GDAL, geospatial data abstraction library. And it's an open source software library, and it's used for reading, writing, and manipulating geospatial data. GDAL is used by virtually every piece of GIS software out there today, from ArcGIS Pro to QGIS, directly in Python or with Jupyter notebooks. There's a ton of ways to get access or to use the GDAL library. And specifically the tool that in this tutorial today that I'm going to show you is the VRT tool within GDAL. And that stands for Virtual Raster Tile Data Set. And that's basically a way to create this virtual data set, list of files, if you will, of files in the cloud that then you can access in the cloud without having to download. Makes sense. So the tutorials, I've got 2, 4, 5. Yeah, I've got 5 planned. I've really only got the one completed, and that's the one I'm going to show you today. And that's using GDAL and VRT with QGIS. I have the tutorial for using ArcGIS Pro in a draft mode. I just haven't done a final edit of it. But suffice it to say, they both are very, very similar in workflows of creating a VRT file. And then the end result of using it in say a program like QGIS or a program like ArcGIS Pro is just a few minor differences on how that interface works. So, or even for that matter, using it directly in Python or with the Jupyter notebook. So you don't even need a desktop GIS to access the data. Well, I want to show you just a little bit, introduce this to you. The link to the introduction document is there. Again, it's a Google Doc. It's also linked into the FAQs are linked to it, that introduction document. It's all linked together. So if you lose these links, you can easily find them just by going to nsgic.org and going to our 3DEP hub. I would also point out in general, QGIS is easier to use VRT files with than say Esri, but they both work functionally the same. And I think that's probably because QGIS being a much more open source mentality from the get-go, their environment is just more direct. You have to jump through a few funny little hoops in Esri to use a VRT file, but once you figure it out, it works just as well. So it's an interesting and it's a powerful tool to take advantage of these cloud optimized geotiffs that live up in the cloud. One of the main ways to use this data is USGS has the Rocky Web file server where they host all their 3DEP elevation data sets. And that's available for accessing the files individually and downloading them. But one of the cool things they did was right in the root directory, they provide a VRT file for each one of the products. And that's a drink from a fire hose, by the way. The VRT file for the seamless 1 meter DEMS is illustrated here down in the bottom right, and you can see it's it's basically the entire continent, North American continent. The difference here, the nuance is that even though this is a 1 meter seamless DEM, there is not 1 meter source data continuously through this geographic area. As we know, it's like 93% at this point, and that's counting projects in process. That doesn't necessarily reflect the percentage of data that's actually physically available today in the 1 meter DEM. So it's a hybrid, and I think, but that's a really cool thing. So you can get the best available product. And USGS is looking at in the future, as this first round of 3DEP concludes is looking at a true seamless 1 meter DEM product for the continental United States. But we'll hear more about that in future meetings. But right now, this is a pretty nice resource, and it's the best available. And this VRT file exists and can easily be accessed right out of the box to access this data. So the tutorial will really teach you how to create your own VRT file or use one. And a VRT file is really nothing more than metadata about where the file is located in the cloud. And it's a very simple ASCII format. It takes a little bit to format, but I've provided a Python program to do that. And the example here is I've created a very easily a VRT file of 96 files in Indiana, obviously my area of interest, to view that. And this one is, I'm actually viewing this in ArcGIS Pro. The advantage of having this this virtual mosaic is that you have all the capabilities of the data in your GIS software. You can do geoprocessing against it, but you don't have to download it. The other advantage is you can easily create this mosaic of your area of interest for your municipality, for your watershed, for your city, whatever geographic area you want, without having to have the GIS administrator of the data, create a service for you. So you can basically cook your own stew here and make your own raster mosaic that you can then serve up and make available in your environment for your end users. So how are states using this? Again, I did an informal survey at the for the mid-year, and I basically asked them to look at the pyramid and identify which one of those resources they were using and which ones they were planning on using, and ones that they were maybe planning to design themselves. And we had 15 states respond, and basically the responses are available in this spreadsheet that's available in a Google Sheet. And everything in yellow indicates one of these original sources from USGS or other national resources. And so if there's a Y in yellow there, that means that particular state, and you can see California here, has a lot of yellow. And they specifically are trying to leverage a lot of these existing federal resources, as well as Iowa and some of the stuff in Indiana. But that's not to say that the states aren't doing anything. You're seeing the stuff in blue indicates the different applications and actually links to the different tools that states are developing. So basically, here's the National Map downloader. So Florida has their own version of it. Alaska has their own version of it. Kentucky does, Oregon, etc. So you're seeing similar type products or tools being developed, but just hosted a little bit differently, or hosting from their repository of data versus the national repository. So this is pretty interesting. So what I did is I took this pyramid and basically stripped off the text and then started to map out where some of the states were doing and how they were doing. And so you're seeing some of the examples here. And I think it's very interesting to see, you're seeing a lot of initial work more on the raster side. And I guess that's not surprising, because cloud-based, point cloud-based processing of this data is kind of a newer and emerging capability through Copic and other capabilities. So we're seeing a much more developed raster side based tools right now, but I expect we will see many more point cloud based solutions. So you can see again, California, Nate Roth provided this report, leveraging a lot of the USGS tools to distribute and access their data. Here we're seeing Alaska. Alaska is a very unique position in that they're kind of up there, all on their lonesome up there, and they really need to ensure that their data and infrastructure is located on their soil, and that their access is guaranteed locally and not through some almost international network to get to it. But having said that, USGS is totally supportive of that effort on site. So that's definitely, Alaska is a special case, but you're seeing a lot of data being developed through in that Alaska geoportal. Wisconsin, another, I think, really good example of a hybrid of taking advantage of the existing services and looking at their local solutions again. They have a unique situation in that their statewide effort is really county-based. So the roll-up of this data into a statewide portal is an additional effort that they're taking on, and just the way the projects are being done in Wisconsin. And one of the neat things I wanted to point out in Wisconsin is USGS has this great little topo builder tool to create your own custom quad maps. And it's as simple as what Wisconsin did here was linked in the direct link to the topo builder right into their website. So people can easily take advantage of this without having to leave, in this case, the state cartographer office website. They can directly link to it and take advantage of these resources. So in a lot of cases, that's as simple as it gets, is you just simply have to link to some of these resources so folks can take advantage of it. And if you haven't tried this tool, this is really just a splendid way to get a custom quad map of your area of interest using all the best available data. It's a very impressive tool that USGS has developed. And of course, I can't do any presentation without bragging on Indiana. And we're obviously seeing a bunch of different initiatives here, a lot of custom ones through Indiana Map that are being developed. But we're also seeing some of these higher end ones with cloud optimized point clouds, cloud optimized geotiffs, and looking at stack and GDAL and VRT as ways to access these data. And Indiana has almost 500,000 cloud optimized geotiff files now in the Amazon cloud that are publicly available. That not only covers their most current ortho and digital elevation data, but it's also covering their historic imagery and elevation data going all the way back to I believe 2005. So definitely trying to take advantage of the cloud storage and the opportunities that folks like Amazon are making available. But I just wanted to show a couple of those. The other thing that Indiana has been able to do is through their partnership with Purdue University, is they have all these data made available through the digital forestry department at Purdue, which is using these data internally for research and for education, but they've made the site publicly available. And they created this cool little plug-in to QGIS that makes the access to the Indiana data literally a click of a button, and it's pretty impressive. So seeing a lot of pretty cool tools becoming available. So in this case, we're looking at a DTM, a DSM. There's a normalized digital height model available. They're creating all these different resources from those cloud optimized GeoTIFF files on the fly, and also available for linking through tools like this. So it's pretty impressive how people are leveraging these data. Go through those. I think last but not least is, going forward, Jason Stoker from USGS presented recently at the 3DEP and 3DHP joint work group about the ever evolving next generation of 3DEP ecosystem, where the concept of data mesh and data lakes are being explored, of how to leverage all these complex systems and networks of not just data, but custom data products that are being developed. And I think you're going to see in the future a lot more capabilities to access these data as USGS moves forward with implementing these types of modern architectures to take advantage of all the hard work that not only they are doing, but other federal partners and potentially state partners could be plugging into this environment in the future to make all this data more discoverable and more available. So we will continue to march down that road as we go forward. And I'd encourage folks, go back to that, I would encourage folks to take advantage of these resources, and to please to edit them and add comments, and to add your own best practices and lessons learned into these resources that we're developing. Any questions? You're still there.
Questions for Phil? Contributions on work that you're doing that may relate? Questions for Jason as to how this whole data mesh is going to work, because I think he's figured the whole thing out.
Sorry, Linda, I was laughing on mute.
I knew you were. I knew you were. So so just to reiterate, the FAQ documents we refer to, these are really workspaces for you, because we're asking you to, they're editable, and we're asking folks to share their own experiences with these resources and what worked, what didn't work, great ideas they came up with in the process. So this is to be a living resource, and it's to serve as a workspace. Steve, why don't you come off of mute? I see you have a question.
Yeah, hi, thanks everybody. We're trying to get into how COGS are going to impact the way we serve up our data as well. And it's still a little bit of a black box to me in terms of, we want to offer different flavors of data to different user groups for, different uses. And so everybody needs a certain flavor of the data. Some want to work on it locally, so they want to download. Other want to have services, so we make them available as dynamic and cached services. And I'm just trying to understand COGS, because it seems like they can replace, if I understand correctly, they are a good replacement for dynamic image services. And from what I just heard, you don't need to download them anymore. So it seems like COGS are really going to be impactful in how we do our business.
They definitely have the potential to do that. But I think we're all learning right now how, and how they can be, taken advantage of. And I think as more easy ways to access these COGS become available, and like this GDAL VRT is an easy way to collate a collection of COG files without having to do any really heavy lifting. It's a very simple process to create a VRT file that then references all the files in your area of interest. And those can be customized for different end users or user communities. And the COG file is obviously, if you have elevation data in and imagery. It works for both. I mean, any GeoTIFF file can be cloud optimized.
Sean, go ahead. Ask your. We got a small group today.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm coming in quite late. Just came from a vendor ladder acquisition meeting. Since we have Jason here and I see Brian and others are here, there's a question I've had kind of looming for a while. In the state of Minnesota, we've been writing language and making it known that our 3-depth data, if you will, our 3-depth LiDAR data is not owned by us. We are custodians of the data, meaning we may take it, we consume it, we will disseminate it. But the master data essentially and ownership resides with the USGS and the citizens and the people of the United States. That being said, then one of the things that I've been trying to find a workflow for that popped in my mind to ask this question in relation to the data mashup that I saw on screen that Phil was sharing is what's the mechanism for reporting errors and needed updates? And I'm not talking about a LiDAR update. I'm talking about, in the state of Minnesota, as we start to bring all of this data together, we're receiving deliveries from the vendors. The vendors have checked the data. It's been gone to the USGS. It's gone through their checks. But as we start to bring this all together, I'm anticipating we might have questions, might see some errors of alignment, maybe not. But what is the workflow for us, and how have other states managed that as we start to assemble statewide data sets from our data from the USGS? And I'll stop there. Hopefully that was asked appropriately.
Yeah, Sean, this is Jason. I'll try to answer. Brian or Rob, who are on, may have to help me out here. I guess it depends are those errors found before or after the data's been published by us?
After.
Yeah, Rob, you can correct me here, but I think, the main mechanism we have is reporting those errors to the National Map Help Desk, and then that gets put into a JIRA type queue to resolve.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the process we have right now. Rob, do you want to?
Yeah, that's really it. I mean, if we go through our TNM help desk, which is like, it's a TNM_help at usgs.gov, but that's where most of the questions we funnel through there. And then, based on the issue, we then, take it to the right subject matter expert and try to work through finding out the root cause and what we can do to fix it, and then get back to you. But we try to route things through our TNM help desk to make sure where they're ones we can answer easily versus ones that we may have to do some digging for. We have the right people trying to get the answers to you. And we really actually appreciate being informed of when errors are found. I mean, it's the best way we have to start fixing the data, getting it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you. That helps.
Any other questions while we have experts on the line? The line, like one ringy dingy.
Linda, I'll continue my question if we got the time. I have something that's related.
We do. Thank you, Sean.
So you heard me talk about how we've been putting language around that we are the custodians of this data and we're not the owners. How has the USGS and or others approached that? Is that a common approach to see us as not the having sole ownership of the data, and we have to revert back to the USGS for stuff, and then from the USGS? So here's maybe a more formal question. From the USGS perspective, is that an appropriate way of looking at this and describing it to our end users and to the citizens of Minnesota?
Brian, you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, but feel free to jump in if you disagree. I'm not really prepared for this one. Sean, you know, I always tell you, you always ask great questions. So, you know, I guess I would say that the 3-dep data, the authoritative 3-dep data is by definition is public domain data that's accessible to everyone. Although I would say a term that I used a lot at BLM would say that USGS is the data steward. I don't know if I like using the term the owner. So I'll kind of use a cop out and use that data steward. And by definition of what I would say there is that take a literal kind of interpretation of that. We're the stewards of maintaining the data, doing the kinds of updating process that Rob and Jason just described, and you know, being the long-term steward curator of those data sets. However, I think that there's a place for what you're describing, Sean. You know, I don't know that a whole lot of states have ever really kind of talked to us about ownership or stewardship of the data. I think a lot of our partners have kind of taken the approach that the national map is the long-term distribution mechanism that the 3-dep program uses for distributing the data. Data management activities and things like that certainly occur internally, and we maintain what would be the authoritative latest version of the data if changes are made and things like that. That's all part of the data management exercises. But you know, I hesitate to say that it's ours. It's the community's, and we wouldn't be able to get here without the community's support. So I don't know if that's really answering your question. You know, maybe Jason or Rob, if you guys want to jump in and maybe disagree or agree or elaborate, please have at it.
No, Brian, I like the way that you use that term steward, because I've never thought of us as the owners of all data. I've thought of us as partners with people who acquire the data with us. And, you know, we have this responsibility to provide a copy to the public with any data that's used federal taxpayer dollars. But yeah, I think what Sean's trying to get at is, you know, if there are changes or issues or corrections that happen, you know, where do those end up? And that's a good question that, you know, we probably need to get a better answer on. But, you know, in theory, and it's actually in practice now, companies can take all of our data and do whatever they want with it. And if there are issues with what they did with it, it gets a little muddy as to, you know, where those issues reside. And we've seen some things like that happen. And, you know, I guess technically a company could take all of this free public available data and sell it to some unsuspecting person who didn't know that it was freely out there. And there's not anything we really can do about it. So I don't know, Sean, if I'm helping answer the question there, but I do like Brian's concept of stewards. We do have a responsibility to, you know, have at least a copy of that data, whether it's the authoritative, we could call it the source if you want. And then how changes are made, I think that's still something that we might want to flesh out a little better.
No, I think both your answers helped. There's several members of our Minnesota 3D Geomatics team here, and we have settled on describing ourselves as stewards as well. And partly where I was going with this is that I want to be able to provide appropriate messaging to end users and citizens in Minnesota here to help them understand that if something is identified in the data, that we have a mechanism in place that will ensure that there's a correction made if need be. But I want them also to understand that's not necessarily us, 3D Geomatics or MinGeo in the state of Minnesota. It's the USGS, and there's a workflow, and that may take time, and we'll circle back. And I'm going to insert my own language here to say that the master data set is updated. And I understand both of you saying, well, you don't really see it as ownership. And that reflects what we've decided on here as well. But I've learned from end users, they feel better when they know who owns the data. Where's it traceable back to the source? Because that then gives us a greater ability to define what is authoritative data. One or both of you, and maybe even Phil, has used the term today several times since I've joined, authoritative data. Well, authoritative data goes hand in hand in my mind with ownership. And if we don't like the word ownership, maybe then we should talk about the responsibility of maintaining. Maintenance responsibility is probably another way of describing ownership. So since I'm starting to ramble, I'm going to stop there. I appreciate the opportunity, and I get the sense that maybe there should be more dialogue around this because I do.
You know what?
I'll stop.
I would say that we're probably doing a little bit of an exercise in semantics here, but in my mind, when I use that term data steward, the steward would have a lot of the same responsibilities as what you're describing a data owner would have. In terms of the versioning and keeping the data at its, keeping it updated, informing people of the status of the data and all those kinds of things, that would be the responsibility in my mind of the data steward. I would just say, I think probably Jason and I are coming at this from a similar perspective. Both of us are probably a little reticent to use the term ownership because it makes it sound like it's a USGS product. And I think both of us don't want to be labeling it as such, because we can't get to where we got without all of the partners and the contributions. And so if it's USGS's data, well, maybe in practice, again, we're the data steward, but I would have a hard time saying that we owned it. And so again, I think some of this is semantics. But to your point of what's important in doing and why the user community needs to know, again, I'm just going to use that steward term. Who's the data steward and where can they go with questions about the authoritative data sources? I think all of that is very valid and probably something that Jason and I and the rest of our team probably need to think about a little bit more in terms of messaging, especially as we start getting into the next gen type things and adding products and capabilities and looking at sort of expanding the breadth of the program.
Yeah, and Brian, while you were talking, another thing that popped into my head was, if you want to kind of use the analogy of code, the states may partner with us, and we may have this source core data set that's created and that USGS is hosting as an option, but the states may come out and add value by improving the classifications or doing other things. And to me, in coding parlance, it's like there's a fork or a branch in that track that maybe doesn't necessarily come all the way back to the beginning. But we, as the data that we've collected, we would be responsible for making sure that source data is how it's supposed to be. I don't know if I'm helping there or not, but that kind of popped into my head too, that there's a lot of forks and branches that could happen that improve the data that maybe don't go all the way back to the data set the original data set that we're managing or hosting.
I think it's all good. I appreciate the opportunity for the dialogue. It helps us strengthen our perspective on how to describe data and relationships. And that said, we will look for maybe more coming from you folks in the future.
Sounds good, Sean. Always appreciate your engagement. Always have great comments.
Any other questions? Phil, will you make a note? Allison had a question for you in the chat. I know she's looking for those state responses. Maybe you can get to her offline if you don't have that link handy.
Yeah, I'll paste it in there.
Last call. Okay. Well, thank you all for participating, and we just wanted to kind of give a little bit of a brief wrap up. You know, over these 5 years, we've developed a lot of resources, and they're available from the 3DEP FTN Info Hub. There's a state profile dashboard, there are use cases, there are guidance documents, handouts. As you've seen, Phil's worked on several apps, there's tutorials. The document that we've just shared, the data distribution workspace, I like to call it a workspace, and more. There are links to federal resources as well. So please use this hub. This is where the information is. I'll put the link in the chat, understanding that if you just put NSGIC 3DEP, it gets you to the hub. So that's probably the easiest way to go. We should mention that the planning guide was updated this year, as were the 3DEP coordination best practices. And next slide, we'll talk about next steps. We also created a set of checklists for maintaining 3DEP momentum, and that was a product of our workshop that we held at the NSGIC annual meeting last September. This is all your comments. This is your work. So please go. And so while we're on hiatus here with the project, you know, these are resources you can continue to run to keep your momentum going. So continue. I know you guys are going to do this because you have to. Coordinate within your state, you know, plan for data acquisition. And as Brian has told us, we can start talking refresh. Explore and leverage these data management and distribution applications as, you know, as from this groundwork. Keep those proposals coming and keep innovating the application of your data. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Lindsay to talk about the proposal that's been submitted.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miss Linda. So for those of you that were on the state meeting that was held, there's going to be some similar information shared, but for those that are just attending this interest group, I want to make sure that first, NSGIC, of course, wants to thank Linda and Phil for all of their hard work over the last 5 years in leading the charge and keeping us all organized and on task. So very much appreciate them, as well as, of course, we appreciate the states, USGS, and all those that have participated in this project. So our current end date for the project is actually this coming Sunday, so May 14th. So we are going to be in the process of wrapping up all of the information that we've done over the last 5 years, as well as put together this last year project final report. As Linda did mention, we do have a preliminary project proposal in to hopefully continue to engage and to leverage the experience and lessons learned from this particular project and hopefully be able to move forward. So as things develop on that end, we'll definitely keep everyone aware. Just some current highlights from just NSGIC in general. So in the next coming weeks, you will see a new look and feel to the NSGIC website. So we definitely have this particular hub with the state 3DEP project, but we also want to kind of highlight that there will be a lot more user availability on the new website. So there will be a knowledge base. And so if you can't find something necessarily from one place, you will be able to search and bring up, you know, all past meetings, resources, presentation, hopefully in a very easy, user-friendly way. That is our hope. We also have just started our paperwork to file a subsidiary to NSGIC. So we will be incorporating as a 501c3 organization, which will hopefully help us open up funding opportunities and different ways that we can leverage, to be responsive to state and partner needs. So we're very excited, looking forward to that. I think that highlights all of my updates, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Any questions for Lindsay? All right, go
I'm
ahead.
always here and available if anybody does have any questions. So thank you.
So just for those of you that dabble in both projects, we do have a 3DHP info form coming up next week, and California is going to be talking about their approach to 3D hydrography stewardship in preparation for 3DHP. So that will be an interesting talk. And I just want to reiterate what Lindsay said. Thank you all for your participation. You have made this project a great deal. It's very rewarding, and frankly, it's been a lot of fun. So thank you all for your participation, and we'll see you later. Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.
Thanks, Linda, Phil.
Thank
Thanks, Donald.
you.
Thanks, Linda.
Linda,
Yes.
this is Allison from Minnesota. As you are closing out this phase and looking for maybe another initiative going forward, I just wanted to thank you and the NSGIC team and the USGS team for this group at NSGIC, because it's been really invaluable for I'm sure all of us on the call, but in Minnesota, I know we really benefited from all these materials you've provided. And on a personal level, I know I said this in the state meeting, but you took, an hour or two with me when we were first starting out with our LiDAR plan. So I just wanted to thank you and the team and USGS for making this possible over the years.
Well, thank you. It's been just a real pleasure to work with you all, and not many people get to say that about their jobs. So thank you, Allison, and thank you for putting in your year-end achievements. That really helped me with the report. So your feedback's appreciated as well. All right, everybody, thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, guys.